Welcome to the Relentless Growth Podcast. I'm Jack Maher here with my good friend Chase Calhoun. We've got a great episode for you guys today. But first, like always, we're going to start out with updates, wins, what's going on in our lives. And so, Chase, give me a brief update about some good things that are happening, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, so we're based out of Central Arkansas, and we run a construction company and a real estate investment company. I'd say one big win for us is we run a property management company. We're vertically integrated. We've kind of been leaning in heavy on the property management side. So we've just brought on a new director of property management. So somebody that we think is going to be a good fit and kind of a rock star to take that piece of the business over. So as part of that, we're going to be pushing a little bit on third party property management, which I don't love, but it's kind of like if we don't do the property management well, the rest of it doesn't work. So we're just going to lean into it and try to get really, really good at it. So I think that's a update and an exciting win for us, bringing that person on to take it over, and then we're going to push on growing that part of the business a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, that's awesome. For us, we're in Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is about 30 minutes south of Nashville. And so primarily we've built single family houses over the years and sold them. Right now we're building a lot of multifamily, which we intend to keep as much as possible. But with us, we've had a very fun last week. Our local city announced Monday that they were no longer issuing building permits. So we've had sewer capacity issues, things like that, but all of it was, at least a year out before the impact hit until Monday when it hit Monday. And so, the big win out of that though, was we had 3 permits that we needed to pull to complete a multifamily complex. And so we were extremely worried about, getting financing, just having a couple buildings sitting if we weren't able to pull those. And so we were able to pull those before they implemented the building permit ban or whatever it is. They say it's temporary. We'll find out. But so that was a big win. We've got everything we need to complete the complex now. So this week has been a little bit hectic. Obviously, when we filmed our last podcast, I was at the beach. So I came back into town, and first thing Monday morning, starting off with an email from your lawyer that, hey, here's what's going on today. But we were able to make it work. And it really was a testament. A lady in our office, we've dealt with the same people at the county, at the city for a long time. And so through the relationships we had, we were able to get those permits pulled, but it was not without a little bit of stress. So that was a big win.
That's awesome. It's also wild that it's grown so much that they're literally put a stop to building permits. Single family homes also, or just multifamily?
Anything.
That's crazy. That's wild. Well, I mean, I guess with the housing market the way it is right now, I guess it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Thank God you're able to get those multifamily ones pulled. But
yeah,
it's just one of those things where you wouldn't expect to run into that problem. I guess that they're just.
Yeah, it's always the thing you don't expect. Yeah, that wasn't what we were expecting, but at least we were able to get past it a little bit.
We'll get into the topic here in a second, but I was telling somebody recently, it's like every time that I think like I've seen it all, like something just from way out in left field like that pops up, and you're just like, oh, I wouldn't have guessed that was going to be an issue. It's always something new and exciting.
It's 100% true that history repeats itself. But also, like, the biggest factor is never what's happened before. It repeats itself, but it doesn't. And so you learn from it, but you can only learn so much. But kind of transitioning into our episode today. So I think we've got a pretty interesting one. Jace and I are going to be talking about the difference between discipline and motivation, and kind of what that means in our lives and how we've been able to use those two things. And so just to start it out, I think it's a pretty great distinction when you think about it, because motivation is really powerful, but it's also really hard to maintain. And so I think we've all had things where, we make plans, we're excited about it. And then, 2 days later, it's, you're not quite as excited. There's been time since that initial point or that initial pain or whatever it was. And so that's kind of where the discipline comes into play. But just what's an example of how that's kind of played out in your life, Chase?
I mean, I think it plays out in a bunch of places. I think that, some of the people I follow maybe talk about this a lot where, motivation is great, but it won't get you to where you need to go. And discipline is kind of like, I mean, that's where it's at. And it's just, you can achieve so much more with discipline than you ever can motivation. I think it's worth, I pulled it up real quick, just reading kind of the actual definition of the two. So what I came up with, discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. And I think that's super powerful and important. And then motivation is the desire or drive to act. It's the emotional spark that gets you started. So it's like you get motivated about something that's exciting, maybe it's new or whatever. That's when you're motivated. But it's like the discipline is what'll take you there. The big recent example that I can think of for me is the Ironman, right? Like when I decided that I was going to sign up for that Ironman, like I was motivated because it was like I signed up, I paid for the race. Like I think that motivation was early on, but very, very quickly that motivation goes right out the window. And the only way you're going to make it through that whole experience, because the amount of training that's required leading up to it, is discipline. And so for me, it's just knowing that like there's going to be days where I didn't feel like doing it. I'm going to do it anyways, or just do the best I can. And then just being disciplined with other aspects of my life, like scheduling and recovery and sleep and all those other things kind of. So again, when I signed up for the race, I was probably very motivated that first couple of days or that first week or whatever, but that motivation goes away real quick. And it was the discipline that got me through to the finish line. And I would say probably every aspect of my life, business and my relationship with my wife and family and everything. I think that discipline, motivation is great, but I think discipline is what's probably most important.
No, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I distinctly remember when I finished my half. Uh, One of the first things I said to my wife when I got in the car afterwards was like, "Man, if I had not already signed up for the full, I would not sign up right now." Like
Yeah.
I was like, that was miserable. I cannot imagine doing double that. But I had signed up, I had committed, I had to do it. And so it was 100% the discipline that carried it through, because yeah, my motivation at that point was definitely not super high. And I think that's one of the things that I think about as part of this topic that's a little different for everybody, is you have to understand like what you need to be disciplined. Like my wife is totally opposite than me. I I crave and I really like external discipline. Like that helps me. Like telling people, accountability partners, like my business coach right now, Trevor McGregor, business life coach. Like I, for the last couple months, I've been texting him my weight every morning because I was trying to be more disciplined, and so like that's super helpful for me. Like I enjoy that stuff. Like it helps keep me on track. Like my wife is totally opposite than me. Like she would much rather decide she's going to do something in her head, never tell anybody about it, and then but she would get it done, and so there's different things that keep different people on track. And so I think that's part of discipline as well, is setting up the right systems. You talked about scheduling and recovery and all the things you have to do, but it's really a lot that goes into it, uh, other than the surface. There's a lot of back end work that you have to do to make discipline possible. And so I think that's a big part of it. Like if you say, like I'm really weird. I like to wake up at 3:58 every morning. But if I go to bed at midnight or 1 a.m., I'm not setting myself up for that. I'm going to fail eventually. And so you've got to do a lot of setup work to make discipline possible. But the Ironman's a good example for me as well. Um, when I signed up, I was supposed to do it in 2020, and then everything got delayed for COVID. So I ended up waiting an extra year, which was probably helpful from a training perspective, but it definitely plays with your mind a little bit where, hey, you were geared up to do something and then you have to move on. And so there were many, many, many mornings that I'm sure Chase had as well, where I did not want to get out of bed. I did not want to, the last thing I wanted to do was get in the pool or get on the bike or run or do any of those things. But you knew that if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't do it the next day, and then you wouldn't be able to accomplish that goal. So yeah, it's definitely the little things along the way there that really impact your discipline, I would say.
Yeah. So I try to use discipline just in like my everyday life, like in business and in personal life. So all my I've got like five things that like I'm my goal is to do those, at least those 5 things every single day. And I'm old school about it. Like I write them down on a piece of paper every single day and I cross them off every single day. So like to me, that's getting those things done is discipline. I think it's worth noting though, but that's like something for me to strive for. And then my to-do list, and I try to limit it to say 5 things a day, where those are 5 things that I'm going to get done today. And it's worth noting that I don't always, I try to be as disciplined as possible, but it always doesn't happen, or I always don't get to 100%. And like, that's okay. The difference is like tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to try to achieve those exact same disciplines tomorrow and do the best I can to complete them all. I think where a lot of people get themselves in trouble is they'll get motivated to do something, whether it's, run an Ironman race or do a 5K, or I'm going to do 5 tasks a day, whatever it is, diet, whatever. And it's like they'll start out motivated and they'll start getting the discipline in, but then they'll mess up a little bit, or they'll get a little bit off track, and then they kind of they just like forget it. Like, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I think with discipline, it's really important to realize that it's like something you strive for, is to be like, if I could be perfectly disciplined in my life, there's no doubt that I'd be in a better spot. Right. It's just not realistic. And there's some days, I had a day the other day where I had my 5 must do items and I got 4 out of 5 done. And then I had my 5 to do items, and it's like, not one of them happened because it's just the day got completely off track. And so it's easy to get frustrated and be like, oh, forget it. Like, it's just not going to happen or whatever. But for me, it's just like I reset the next day and I knocked it. And it was like the next day I got every single one of those things done plus some. And so I say it's worth noting that it's important to start to be as disciplined as you can with the things that are important to you. But just realize if you do have a hiccup or you get off track, and same thing with the Ironman training, there was days where it's like, I struggle with swim. Like I try to be as disciplined as possible with hitting my swim workouts, but that was the one where if like I got crunched on time, I would just kind of skip that. And so, but it's like, just because I skipped it this week doesn't mean I'm not going to do it next week. And so I think it's just important noting that just if you get a little bit off track, just try to jump back on track and continue to build that like discipline muscle. And I think the more you do it, the better off, or the better you get at it.
No, I think that's a really underrated point, and it's something that I struggle with a ton, that I've worked with my coach a ton about. Of, you set this goal, you set this plan, and then you get off track, and how do you handle that? And I think traditionally, like, my method of handling it was like, all right, man, we're out the window. Like, let's just go the other direction. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, you're trying to
Yeah.
be disciplined on food. You make a mistake, you have a bad day. It's really easy to be like, all right, well, let's just keep it rolling. Let's keep eating the stuff we want. And so I think it's really important to think about that on the front end. If you have a goal, of, hey, what's going to happen when I miss or when something goes wrong? Because it will. We're not perfect. We're not machines. Things are going to happen. You might get injured, or you might get, all the sorts of things happen when you have something like this. And so thinking through, hey, what's my plan if something goes wrong, and giving yourself grace of, hey, that's okay. It's all good. You're going to miss a day. You're going to mess up. Here's how it's going to get back on track. And so that's something I struggle with in my life for sure, is consistency. And if I'm inconsistent, getting right back on, because that's the most important thing. And then, I think kind of the other aspect of it that I think discipline gets a bad rap. I think because people think there's like, then you can't do anything else. Like, they feel like it's locking them in, or it's confining them too much. Um, and I really like. I'm a big Jocko Willink fan, and so his saying is discipline equals freedom. And I think that's true for me, for sure. Of the more disciplined I am, the more free I feel, and counterintuitively, the more flexibility I feel like I have. Because if I've been disciplined and then something doesn't go right, it's okay, because I've been doing the right things. But I think I think the big thing that I've seen in my life, especially with fitness, working out, things like that, is that discipline stacks on each other. If I'm eating
Yeah.
right and if I'm exercising, chances are every other part of my life is going to do better without me trying. I'm going to be a better husband. I'm going to be more patient. I'm going to be X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't think about, is that it's not just one thing. And it's you don't want to start out with some grand goal of, hey, I'm going to be disciplined in 17 aspects of my life starting tomorrow, and I'm off the rails on all of them right now, because that won't happen, But it really is amazing how when I'm getting up, when I'm eating right, when I'm exercising, just your brain gets that wiring to, hey, I'm going to do the right thing. And so when the opportunity arises later in the day where you've got to make a decision between whatever it is, eating Taco Bell for lunch or going to Chipotle, you're going to go to Chipotle just without you even thinking about it, because of the things you've already done. And so I think the stacking effect of discipline is huge. And I think it's something that's not talked about enough, because you don't have to make a grand plan for your life. If you start doing a couple things right, then it's going to build upon itself. And I think it can have a tremendous impact just by a pretty small first step.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's awesome. I would agree with that a lot. I think that for me personally, I feel the exact same way. So, like when I'm being very disciplined with my life, I always feel a little bit better. I think some of that's like, if I'm telling myself that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, when I'm disciplined and I actually do what I tell myself I'm going to do, I feel better. I think that's an important thing. And I think it's also worth something you mentioned, I think in two parts, but worth mentioning, like where I've struggled with it a lot is like with my diet. And so I think it's like you can be motivated to like stick with your diet, but if you're not disciplined with it, it makes it'll like negatively snowball. Where you're like, screw it, I'm just gonna, I'm already heading down that path, and it just gets worse until the point where you get motivated again and you start again. Where I've had the most success is with being disciplined with it, but then also having like systems or guardrails in place where it keeps me more accountable. And so for me, it's the same thing. I have a trainer, and it's like I have to report my average weight every week to my trainer. And if it's like I go too many weeks where it's not going in the right direction, or if it's getting worse or whatever, he'll hold me accountable, and it'd be like, bro, like you're either not logging the stuff correctly, or you're cheating it. So it's like, now you're going to send me every day how many calories you're eating and pictures of the food. And then it's wild, because all of a sudden it's like the scale starts going in the right direction again, because I wasn't being disciplined enough with myself. And so it's like sometimes where you struggle with it, you almost have to get some help or have somebody help you hold you accountable, or put systems in place where it makes it hard for you to not, or that sets you up for success and not kind of fail in that area. And so I think that's one place where it's worth noting, where you can put some stuff in place to make yourself or force yourself to be more disciplined with it.
I think that's a great point. And food, I think I feel like that's a pretty universal thing that we all struggle with. Sugar is probably the most addicting thing on the planet, and so, and it's in everything. And so making a decision on something like food it requires a lot of planning to make it right. If you keep all the same food in your house, but your goal is not to eat any of it, that's going to be a struggle. If you're surrounded by all this temptation all the time, like eventually you're going to crack. But if you at least introduce a lot of new things where you've always got something available that fits whatever diet you're trying to do, you're infinitely more likely to succeed. And so if you eat out every day for lunch, um, you need to make a plan for, hey, what are a couple alternatives that I can do instead of going to my normal places? And so it's simple stuff like that. But I think that's the other end of discipline, is planning for how you're going to execute on it as well. Because, a diet is good, training is good, but hey, where are you going to train? Where are you going to eat? What's the time you're going to do all these things? Um, because it's really easy for the day to get away from you. And that's why I love mornings, is because it's really the only part of the day that I truly control. And so, from 4 to 7, nobody else is awake. Nobody's calling me. Nobody's bugging me. I can get done what I need to get done. So that's why I like waking up early, is because I can control it. But you've got to focus on, hey, what part of my day can I control and what part can't, and then plan for it. Hey, when can I work out? When can I eat right? When can I do whatever it is? When can I read? If your goal is to, hey, I'm going to read a book this month, all right, when are you going to do that each day? And so I think it's a pretty important aspect to think through the timing of it. And I would always encourage people to wake up early. I know Chase wakes up early, but I think it's one of the most powerful habits you can have. And my dad would be the exact counter opposite of this. He's
Yeah.
been very successful in life, and he wakes up at noon largely. So there are exceptions to every rule, and I live and work with one every day, or every day growing up. But so there are always exceptions, but I think as a general rule, starting off your day uh, by yourself in a powerful way with habits that you can control is the absolute best way to get started for me. Um, but to kind of wrap it up, Chase, if that's my advice, I would say wake up early, concentrate on one habit, and kind of let it stack on each other. Like, what would you say to people, Chase, to kind of get them started down this discipline route, in addition to kind of like bridge the gap between motivation?
Yeah, so I like the idea, and I think I'm sure a couple different guys have taught this, but it's something I've really implemented is doing some daily non-negotiable things, and those can be different for everybody, and they can change over time. And so the way I look at it is and I've got 5 like daily non-negotiable things that I'm getting those done every single day. And then when it becomes a habit, when I've done them for so long that it's no longer difficult for me to achieve those things, I'll try to take it off that list and replace it with something else. And so I think that's a great way for people to get started. And I think it could be 3 to get started. So maybe it's, it's whatever, wake up early, go to the gym and do something else. And so again, it can be different for everybody. Just try to be consistent with, and I like to write them down and cross them off when I complete those things. It could be read 10 pages out of a book, or, look up and write down a impactful quote, or, whatever it is, but just something. It's the discipline of doing those things every day. And then again, over time, I think like you said, it compounds positively where you're feeling better and you're feeling better about yourself. But then it's also like, for me personally, like I'm disciplined about my workouts. Like my workouts are in my calendar, like they've got to get done. That's like a discipline, non-negotiable thing. I'll tell you what, like if I miss one of my workouts and I can't shift it or I can't make it up and I just completely miss it, like it really does not feel good to me. Like it's almost like upsetting in a way where like you don't want it to let it mess with your life. Stuff happens and it comes up, but it's become such a discipline of mine. And because I'm so used to it, if it doesn't happen, it's like, it doesn't feel good. And so it's like that discipline, I think over time, as you build it through things like these, waking up early and just set non-negotiable things you're going to get done, it really becomes positive habits in your life. And I think that can hugely compound.
No, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I think, waking up early, starting small, compounding habits, I think it's all fantastic stuff. And, if anybody's out there, we'd love to hear, hey, what's something you want to accomplish? Uh, what can we do to help you get there? Um, I heard from one of our listeners this week, was talking about how he really enjoyed our last episode on kind of accountability at work and record keeping and things like that. And I think this is kind of in that same vein for your personal life a little bit of, hey, what can I do to keep myself accountable? And so, if there's another topic we can address to be helpful on this, but I think it's a really powerful thing, and I think it's really simple. And I think it can, over the long term, can have a huge impact on your life. So we'd love to hear how you guys are applying that. But we really appreciate everybody tuning into this episode. As always, if you got something out of it, please like it, please follow us. We appreciate it, and we'll come back at you next week with another one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Have a good one.